Get started. My name's Jennifer Ott. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Hayward and oversee the city's efforts to redevelop the Route 238 properties, the former Caltrans properties in the city, and obviously portions in the county as well. Monica, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Monica Davis. I'm the Community Services Manager and also the 238 Project Manager.
And then we have Tim with the city here, who's here just in case we screw up on the technology here in the Zoom. This, as some of you may have heard, this is my first community meeting by Zoom. I've done lots of meetings, but so bear with us as we try this out. We're going to try to actually do some polls, try to make it a little interactive. And a couple kind of ground rules or just kind of housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. That way we'll be able to post it and allow people who weren't able to attend or didn't have the right technology, that we can make it available by on our webpage and people can tune in later. Also, there's a Q&A in Zoom, so you're welcome to enter questions there. You're also, at the end, we're going to do, you can raise your hand and we'll answer questions verbally as well as through the Q&A. So if you don't want to raise your hand and talk, you can also just type your question into the Q&A, and Monica will be helping me manage that at the end after we go through the presentation. And then something that I'm not, usually I get to see all your faces and you get to see each other's faces, and so we're trying this through the webinar. We may try later to do it through the meetings app on Zoom if you're familiar, but anyway, it feels a little disconnected. So I just wanted to suggest that through the chat, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you certainly don't have to, but if you want to introduce yourself so folks know who else is on, feel free to use the chat to kind of introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm on here, and type your name. Again, not something you have to do. So we're really here tonight to talk about parcels group 8 and 9. They're two parcels and provide a status update, discuss some next steps. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Assuming I can move the slides. Great. We're going to do an introduction and overview of the 238 properties pretty quickly. A parcel group 8 update, and that's this parcel, I'd say, is probably one of the more complicated parcels of all of them. So the majority will be on parcel group 8, but then we'll also give you an update on parcel group 9, which is nearby, of course, and then open it up for questions and answers. So the first is a polling question. We want to try this out. If you, Monica can unmute herself and kind of explain, but you should see, when the poll comes up, you should see an ability to kind of answer this. We just like to know, it should pop up right now and ask you who's attending. So if you don't mind giving this a shot, we're trying to make this a little more interactive, trying some new technology. If you could choose one of the 4 items there, that would be great. And we're going to have polls throughout here so that we can kind of get some real-time information. So it looks like most of you, there's kind of a real cross-section. Some of you live at parcel group 8. Some of you, a lot of you live in the neighboring area. Just a couple of Hayward residents, and then folks that aren't a neighbor or a Hayward resident, but just generally interested in the project as well. So kind of a good cross-section of interested parties. So thank you again for being here. Great. So for those of you, I think a lot of you have been to some of these meetings before probably, but just for those of you who might be joining for the first time, we have the city of Hayward for a long time has been thinking about planning for these former Caltrans parcels. Obviously, Caltrans at one point in the 60s was looking at building a freeway through the Hayward Hills here. That didn't work out. Those plans were abandoned. And then ultimately, in 2016, Hayward and Caltrans came to an agreement for the city to take over ownership of about 10 parcels, and those are the ones you see up here on the screen. We're here to talk about 8 and 9, the red and green ones, way at the northern end near the freeway entrance. And I will say there was also a 2009 land use study, so a lot of planning has gone into thinking holistically about all of these parcels, including a Hayward foothill trail that was actually codified into our zoning so that every one of these parcels has to build kind of its fair share of the trail, so that we really try to build in public benefits and trail amenities throughout these parcels. So there's been a lot of history here. Again, we're here to talk about 8 and 9. So parcel group 8. I just show this just so you can see we've kind of divided it into different segments, and you'll see that's kind of at the baseline of what our strategy for trying to develop this. It's a complicated site, but I wanted you to see kind of, so here's Grove Way, here's Foothill. For those of you who live near or off of Gary Drive, that's right here. And then obviously the folks that are living at the Bridgecourt right here, right off of Grove Way, you can see where you are on this map. So what are our goals for parcel group 8 redevelopment? One of the benefits of the city actually taking over the ownership of these parcels is, and one of the reasons we really did that was to really try to maximize public benefits, community input and outreach, so that, you know, Caltrans was kind of selling these parcels off to the highest bidder, and the city wanted to step in and say, we want a more holistic, comprehensive plan for these. We want to make sure that we're building public benefits into them. And so our goals for parcel group 8 are very similar to our goals for the other parcels, but with some kind of some tweaks, but really remove some of the blighted properties. So there's been some demolition. We know there's still more work to do here on parcel group 8, some buildings that still need to come down. But remove the blight, try to develop it into something that creates an asset for the community. On parcel group 8, we also have existing tenants. And so really wanting to be respectful of them, try to you know, make sure they're incorporated into the project, try to mitigate displacement of those tenants and really identify a part. Huh?
We just got a request if you could slow down just a little bit, please.
Okay, yes, sorry. I talk very fast. But try to identify a partner who might be able to help explore options for the tenants in a way that really mitigates displacement. And so you'll hear about that as well. And then funding new community benefits, trails and parks. So really something we've heard all along as being really important to all of the 238 parcel development. The context, providing a little bit just to kind of get a window into kind of all the things that we're thinking about and worrying about and how we develop that influence how and in what way we develop parcel group 8. So we have 2 different jurisdictions. Part of this land, even though the city owns all of it, some of it falls into the city, some of it falls into the county. There's 11 existing residents, so obviously making sure that we're working closely with them, trying to mitigate any displacement impacts and working closely with them to incorporate them into the project. There's the county general plan and zoning designations. Some of them are a little uncertain for Bridgecourt that we're still working out with the county. You have a county housing element site as well. So we have minimum density requirements for some of the property based on the county general plan and zoning. Some of the land, the city's portion of the land is actually landlocked, so doesn't have access. So trying to figure out how you access some of this property. A lot of it is very steep, so there's non-buildable slope. And then 46% of the total land is zoned open space. And then on top of that, we have a purchase price. So Caltrans says, well, we'll give you this land, city, but when you sell it, you need to pay us a minimum amount so that we can put that money back into a local transportation fund. So we can't, you know, we can't just give the land away. We actually have to sell it, generate some money to pay Caltrans back. So these are all the things that were kind of swirling in our minds when we've been thinking about parcel group 8 that helped us inform kind of our thoughts for moving forward with this development. A lot of community engagement as well has gone since I've been here the last 2 years. We did a big community meeting in November of 2018 where we actually divided the room up by parcel. I actually staffed the parcel group 8 table. So a lot of you, you know, that are on the phone or on this meeting probably were there and met me then. And then what we heard at that meeting was, hey, we want you to come to our neighborhood and we want you to have a neighborhood meeting just for us. And so we did that in March 2019, a neighborhood meeting at the Japanese Garden or at the Douglas Morrison Theater, and had a meeting just on some of our thoughts about parcel groups 8 and 9. We've presented to the Castro Valley MAC twice, the Eden Area MAC, worked closely and talked with Supervisor Miley's office, the county, the Hayward Area Recreation District, a number of community members that I imagine some of you are on the phone, and then a lot of the development community, because you really need to keep a thought, or, you know, you need to be aware of what the development community is willing to build. And so we've talked about nonprofit and for-profit developers to get their sense of the issues for this property and thoughts for developing it. So some of the feedback that we've heard a lot from the existing residents is to really be aware of them and their the impacts that this development will have on them, and make that a priority as we go through the planning process for this development, this parcel. Also, a lot of the residents we've heard explore a land trust for Bridgecourt parcel. And that's just a model where you actually, the land gets put into a trust, kind of a nonprofit trust, and then the improvements essentially are kind of sold or under ownership by the tenants or the people who live there. Surrounding community, what we've heard from you, maximize the open space and trails, try to do lower density development, single family homes if you can, create some higher value development, preserve views, certainly don't do anything to impact existing views, plan a trail with minimal impacts to adjacent homes, incorporate, again, existing tenants, and any affordable components, try to put them closer to foothill, and then minimize traffic. A lot of concerns about traffic on Grove Way with the school, especially during kind of those school drop-off times. So with all of that in mind, you've already seen this map, but here's the open space parcel. Can you see my cursor? Monica, can you see yeah. So this dark green is the open space. This is kind of, and we'll call this the open space segment. And these two parcels are the middle segment. This is in the county, and then the orange is in the city. This is the landlocked portion. A lot of the topography is on these two parcels, and then the pink parcels, some on the city, and then the Bridgecourt parcel is actually in the county. So to try to address all the constraints, all the community feedback, we've put together some thoughts about what to do, and we have a proposed approach to development. And the idea is to really divide the property up into 3 segments and move forward with 3 distinct community and development processes. So again, there will be ongoing outreach and planning as we move forward. And this is not by any means the end of the discussion. But one is to really bring on a nonprofit affordable housing developer to try to minimize impacts to existing residents and explore that land trust, rehab option for existing tenants, and also new construction options for the Bridgecourt parcel. The other is open space dedication. So those 9 acres that you saw in the dark green, look at dedicating them to HARD for expansion at Crosby Park. And then lastly, do a lower density kind of market rate housing and trail expansion consistent with the county zoning on those middle parcels. And this is really where we kind of satisfy Caltrans purchase price, because Caltrans would only let us kind of divide up these areas, or divide up parcel group 8 into 3 segments if they know that they're going to get their money back and put back into that transportation trust. And so this is where we're able to do some market rate housing to help pay for the development and meeting Caltrans purchase price. So I'm going to walk through each of these. Monica, any more discussion about going too fast, or does it seem like everything's okay? Okay, great. So the first is the Bridge Grove segment, really the objective. We kind of established for each of these segments really an objective. What are we trying to achieve with each of these segments? This one really, our focus is on incorporating the tenants into the development, minimizing any sort of, really trying to minimize any displacement impacts to them, and also generate much needed affordable housing. We're in an affordability crisis, and create some affordable opportunities for our neighborhood and our community. So this would be a multifamily 100% affordable project is what we're thinking. We think approximately 75 to 100 units, but it really depends. It's still very preliminary. And then the nonprofit developer would respectfully address tenant displacement issues and help to incorporate tenants into the project. And because it's one of the things, we could have found maybe a market rate developer who wanted to do multifamily housing, but we really wanted to focus on a nonprofit developer motivated less by profit and more by really trying to figure out a way to come up with a respectful strategy for the existing tenants and create new opportunities, affordable opportunities for our community. And there's also potential for ground floor community space that we're also exploring and talking about. So we are we've had a lot of discussions with resources for community development. They're a highly qualified nonprofit affordable housing developer, and they've expressed interest in this project. We're still very preliminary stages, but we would like to move forward with them to explore how we might develop this as affordable housing. They'd be required to help incorporate the existing tenants into the project. There'd be new construction on the front city parcel. So this parcel would be new construction, new development. And then we'd ask that any kind of exploration, would include 3 potential options for exploration. One, the community land trust. The other would be rehabilitation of these units and then keep them as rental units for the existing tenants. And then new construction. And so doing all new construction here, but again, with the goal of trying to incorporate existing tenants into the project. A timeline, so there's no likely, we've heard this from some tenants, how fast is this all gonna happen? There wouldn't be any construction for 1 to 3 years. Our hope is to try to move it quickly because I know there's a lot of uncertainty. but it takes time too to get all the financing to develop this. So we do have a polling question. Oops, I'm going to go back. And here we'd like you to do, if you can choose three, your most important priorities for development of the Bridgecourt segment. I've kind of outlined some here, but you're also welcome to put in an other if you'd like. So we're going to go ahead and try the poll again.
I did want to share, so we do have one call-in person, and so they won't be able to vote currently on the live version. However, we will be posting this recording and an online survey so that the person who's calling in could, at a later time, fill out the survey and provide their feedback, as well as other people who couldn't attend the meeting.
All right, great. So at 17 out of the 22 that are on the phone or on the, so we're going to share that. So it looks like almost, the vast majority of the people who voted here really want to maximize the affordability of the project and incorporate existing residents in the project being a main kind of goal for the project. The other ones that look like, I'm just going to make sure I'm not missing some at the end here. Yeah, it looks like create safe and walkable connections with the surrounding community and the adjacent middle segment kind of came in after that, but a good section of feedback here. Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on. That's great. And we're keeping all this data, and I think we'll try to find a way, I'm not sure we haven't done, but try to find a way to get so that you can see all these results and have more time to review them as well. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next segment, which is the open space segment. And here the objective that we really tried to focus on for development was how do we expand an asset? You already have Carlos B. Park there. How can we kind of use this asset to expand into Carlos B, create an even larger open space trail asset for the community? And that was really, and kind of create those green space amenities. So it would be a over 9 acre expansion of Carlos B Park, would be a 238 trail dedication, and then a potential just dedication to HARD for this land. And we have had multiple conversations with HARD staff and board, and there is very positive interest. And so we are moving forward with them, talking through some of the technical details of how we can try to make this happen. So for this, we have another polling question. What is the most important consideration in planning for the expansion of Carlos B Park? And you'll see I've put up here about 5 different options, but again, you're welcome to fill something else in as well. So go ahead and there's I think 21 folks now. So if you want to go ahead and vote, that would be great. Great, and it looks like kind of a tie, and Monica's going to go ahead and share the results. Yeah, really a tie. Of, I guess I don't see the number now, I guess of the 18 people, a third really said maximize trails and public access, another third preserving and restoring riparian habitat. But there were votes for other, there were three votes for really maintaining this area in a safe and clean manner. So this is really great information for us to take back. Thank you. I'm going to move on. So now we're talking about the middle segment, which is really these 2 middle parcels. Again, half of it in the city, this lower portion in the city that's kind of landlocked. So really trying to figure out access for that parcel. And the thought is really by combining them, we solve a number of issues. I mean, one is that we get access to this city parcel and just create kind of a more comprehensive kind of community neighborhood instead of trying to divide them up. So here, our objective for development here is really to balance the need to generate land value, because remember, Caltrans is only going to let us kind of move forward with dividing this up for affordable housing and open space, neither of which generate any land value. If we were able to use these middle parcels to do some of that. So this is where we really want to see some market rate housing to try to meet those Caltrans requirements. But at the same time, we have a county housing element in general plan that we don't want to change. The housing element at this point, I think you can't really rezone any property or downzone any residential property based on recent state law. So we really have to try to be consistent with what the county has already done there. It's a housing element site. So we really want to focus on housing, but try to do it in a way that was respectful of the neighborhood's concerns about traffic and trying to keep it higher value and lower density, and that fits with needing to meet the Caltrans purchase price. So what we're thinking on this yellow part here, there's a single family residential zoning. We would probably develop that for single family zoning, and then we would do kind of medium density, most likely townhomes, here, extending Gary Drive, and then we'd have to create a new Bridgecourt access here to get to the city portion. So this would be townhomes. Oops, sorry about that, you guys. And I'm going the wrong way. And we'd also, which I think importantly, even though it's not required by the county, we would require that any developer would have to build an extension of the 238 Foothill Trail through this development at their expense and have to help pay to maintain it. So that would be an added development requirement. Because we're a public land owner, we can make developers do that, even though it's not required in the zoning. And so we would make sure that we extended through that Carlos B expansion park through this development to Grove Way. So you'd actually have public walking and bicycling access all the way to Grove Way through this development, paid for by the development. And so I think a really exciting public benefit as part of this project. So we're thinking probably it ends up being about 50 market rate townhomes for the top part. And then here's kind of the city portion. Again, really, we have this very narrow access. That's a shared driveway with a business off of Foothill. So we would need that Bridgecourt access. And you're looking at probably another 50 market rate townhomes. And so when you combine them, really maximize the market rate development, extend that Foothill Trail, a total approximately 100 units, and the intent really to meet that purchase price, which creates that flexibility for those other parcels to really create more public benefit, and no change to the county or city land use designations. So we have another polling question for you here. We've got 2 polling questions, I think, on this one, right, Monica? I think we do. So what are the 3, in this case, 3 most important priorities for development of that middle segment? So take some time to kind of read those those potential answers. Of course, you have the other category if I've missed something, and look forward to seeing what you guys think are your top priorities. So here we're sharing the results. So interesting, maximizing housing opportunities for a mix of income being by far one of the top priorities, followed very closely, it looks like, by creating a publicly accessible, well-maintained, and well-connected trail system. Also, creating a walkable and sustainable neighborhood and minimizing traffic impacts is kind of close second and fourth. So those really interesting results. Thank you. I'm just giving everyone a chance to look at those a little longer. Great. Oops. All right, and so we're going to go, we have another polling question for the same. What is the top consideration in how the 238 Foothill Trail gets developed in this area? So just in that middle segment, you already told us kind of what your priorities were for Carlos B. Tell us, just in this middle segment where you're going to have homes and new streets, what would you really want to see in terms of that Foothill Trail that runs through that development? What's most important? So go ahead and take a chance to kind of read those answers, and then we look forward to seeing what you think. Okay, if that 18th person wants to vote. It looks like we're stopping at 17 here, so why don't we go ahead and stop, and we'll share the results with you. And interesting, this was a lot more even, right? I mean, the top vote getter was creating that off-street multimodal trail for bikes and pedestrians, which is great. But then the votes really kind of came, were kind of a lot more kind of evenly distributed on this one than some of the others. So the next highest being maximizing public access to adjacent neighborhoods. I know, having talked to a number of you in that neighborhood, really you guys use that area and wanting to continue to have that public access to the wildlife and the open space. And so, great. Okay, well, thank you so much.
To share, Ginny asked, and maybe some of you are wondering and don't have the question and answer open, the red line in the poll shows the most selected option, and the blues are less selected.
Great, but you can see on some of them, like this one, it was 6 versus 5. So obviously we're not going to just be going with the orange. We'll be looking at all of the results. But I think really interesting that it is a little more evenly distributed. Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that. And again, if you didn't read this all and process it all, we'll have this on our webpage so that you can look at it more carefully when you have more time. Great. All right. So next, so our next steps on parcel group 8. Our next step for the Bridge Grove segment is to recommend that we move forward with resources for community development and nonprofit developer and enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with them to really start digging in and exploring these options, the land trust option, the rental rehab, and new construction option, and really start having some more conversations with the tenants, and getting a little more specifics. And so bringing on that developer who really has the expertise that we need to kind of move it to the next stage. And so that would go September 22nd to the City Council for approval. And then RCD, along with us, we're not going to get out of the picture. I can tell you we're a very active kind of partner in all of these development deals, is to continue to engage with the tenants and the community about the Bridge Grove segment. Second, the open space segment, again, we've had numerous conversations with HARD. We're going to continue those discussions. And honestly, as quickly as we can get through the technical aspects of this, making sure that HARD knows about the property and feels comfortable with it, we will try to dedicate that property to HARD as quickly as possible to help so that they can start really thinking more long-term about the expansion of the Carlos P. Park. And then the middle segment, I'd say, unlike, a lot of private development, this is one of the benefits of it being a public ownership, is that developers usually want to start with the market rate housing. They want to get that, they get the value. In this case, we can kind of do the reverse, and we're really going to focus on affordable housing and open space. And then we'll start talking with figuring out what are we going to do with those middle segments. But our priority are the public benefits. And then we'll start probably, with everything going on right now, probably not until early next year will we start to solicit interest from developers to start to develop the market rate housing, which doesn't mean we're going to put it on the back burner. It just means, there's a lot going on, and we're going to try to focus on that kind of after the new year. And that would be winter and spring. Okay.